So people always ask me, Jake, why do you use AAVE? The returns absolutely suck over there. As you can see, I'm getting less than literally 0.01% on my wrap Bitcoin, less than 0.01% on my wrap staked Ethereum, and I'm getting a whopping 0.07% on my linked tokens. Now, AAVE is decent if you're doing stablecoins, like 5.3% over here on USDC. It's not bad. 11% over here on USDT, also not bad. Occasionally, these things will shoot up to like 15, 20%, but in all honesty, I'd rather be in 20, 30, even 40% APR stablecoin liquidity pools than parking on over on AAVE. Now, the exception to that is where I want to leverage, or where I want to essentially park my crypto assets and borrow against them, and I want to use that capital for something in specific. So I'm going to be showing you my safe and easy to use leverage strategy, and of course you can lose your shirt doing this, and that's why it's important to be safe. As you'll notice right here, I have a health factor of nearly 6, right? The lowest health factor you can have is 1, and then you get liquidated at that rate. My current LTV is 13%. Now that's fancy phrase for saying basically I am borrowing 13% of my collateral. So I have $8,600 in borrows right now, but I have $66,000 in collateral. So when we do the math right there, boom, 13%. So I am borrowing a very, very safe amount against my capital. I am not trying to leverage up to the absolute max and try to have 2x leverage or anything along those lines. I am strictly trying to keep exposure to the assets that I want to have exposure to and gain a little bit more exposure whenever I see nice dips in the market. Now, of course, I want to show you the reasoning here, right? So I'm going to pull up Bitcoin over on CoinGecko, and we're going to zoom out, look at the past 3 months, right? And what I want you to pay attention to is the great opportunity that was ahead of us right before Bitcoin peaked, right? Right here on November 4th. Essentially, everything was leading up to the presidential election. Anybody that was investing into crypto for over 6 months or part of DeFi Excel, DeFi Legacy, or really any DeFi community, they knew that the election was a huge turning point for not just crypto, but for DeFi as a whole, because we were expecting huge gains and huge returns after that election. But over here, you can see Bitcoin was slowly rising, but as of October 30th, it started going from $72,000 at roughly a peak price, and then it dipped all the way on November 4th to roughly $67,500. Now, this wasn't the lowest price that we saw, but this was a very, very good buying opportunity, and frankly, it was our last buying opportunity before the election, before we saw huge gains like we saw over here, now sitting over $100,000 per Bitcoin. So what did I do, and what could have you done as well? Well, I went and I borrowed 7,500 USDC against the already existing Bitcoin that I had in my AAVE balance, basically. So that's 7,500 USDC that I was borrowing against some Bitcoin right there. Now, again, I had other collateral as well. I had Ethereum, I had some Link on there as well. So I wasn't just borrowing USDC against my Bitcoin, I was borrowing it against all of my assets essentially. But I knew Bitcoin was going to shoot up after this. So therefore I took a $7,500 borrow out. And keep in mind, this is on November 4th. It's showing as November 5th right here because it's converted in the time zone. But basically I then swapped that USDC $7,500 for Bitcoin. And then I took that Bitcoin and I collateralized it over on AAVE. That was 0.11 WBTC right there. And then what I did is I took that Bitcoin and I threw it up on AAVE as well to increase my overall collateral, even though I was already borrowing it out, kind of netting out my borrow basically. And then I had an additional 0.11 WBTC that I got exposure to for $7,500. Now today, 0.11 WBTC, that's worth $11,120. So $7,500 got me exposure to $11,120 without having to inject more capital into the market, without having to do any complex trading, just simply leveraging my already existing assets and having very, very strong conviction in doing it safely because I wasn't borrowing too much against my collateral. And I did this exact same thing on November 13th when I saw a good buying opportunity for Link. Borrowed 1,000 USDT, took that 1,000 USDT and swapped it for Link right over here. I got roughly 74 Link, and then of course I collateralized that 74 Link, which is now worth $1,761. So a $700 profit right there, which is 170% return on my investment basically. My investment wasn't really anything out of my pocket. It was just leveraging my already existing assets. So basically, with that being said, I borrowed $8,500. I've now paid an additional $100 just in borrowing cost, but by paying that extra $100 in borrowing cost, I was able to make $4,000 from the Bitcoin play and then another $750 from the Link play. $4,750, and I paid $100. So not a bad return whatsoever right there. It's not to mention that I do the same exact thing over here on MarginFi. I essentially collateralize IMSOL and Render, and of course Pith. And then I borrowed $2,000 of USDC, and I converted that to Sol, which is now worth $3,000. So that puts this overall strategy profit at $5,750. And of course, I took another $1,000 and stuck that right over here in Render, which as you can see was 149 Render tokens, which is worth $1,448 today, putting me at a $450 profit right there. Therefore, meaning just off of using my already existing cryptocurrency assets, using slave leverage, I was able to make an additional $6,200 in profit profit. And guys, that's unrealized. I haven't sold it yet. I haven't closed out any of these positions, but that's because I'm expecting the prices to go even higher. And I'm going to continue to do this exact same thing because as the prices of my collateral go higher and as I make more money just from the collateral going up, this loan to value ratio right here will go down because the borrow will stay relatively similar because the APY is only 11% over here per year. So that means I can then go and take out more borrows because at the time of borrowing and executing this strategy, I had a 25% loan to value ratio. But since these assets are doing so well, that loan to value ratio goes down because the borrow is relatively fixed compared to the overall supplied assets. There's also strategies over on Camino Finance where you can do the same exact thing. One thing that I want to go ahead and show you is this JLP position that is currently at a $3,500 profit based off of this strategy. Now it's a little bit different because it's actually yield bearing at the same exact time. It's generating me a 128% APY, but I'm basically leveraging up on an asset. Think about it the equivalent of how wrap stake Ethereum earns an extra 4% per year in its asset price. So that's why wrap stake Ethereum is at a higher price than Ethereum. If we were to take a look over at the price of Ethereum today, Ethereum is currently at 38.17, whereas if we were to take a look at the price of wrap stake Ethereum, it's currently at 45.32 because the extra 3 to 4% staking yield that you get from staking Ethereum is actually put back into the price. Therefore, it just grows a little bit more basically. Now, JLP does the exact same thing. It's just on steroids because it earns a 90% APY, and it's because it's a liquidity provision token, but it's also liquid at the same exact time, so you can use it on lending and borrowing platforms. What I did over here on Camino is I used the built-in multiply feature to essentially leverage up on JLP using this PYUSD loop. So what this does is I deposit JLP or PYUSD. In this case, I did about 10,000 bucks or so, and I select a multiplier, which you can do a lot if you want to. Now, I personally did not do a lot of leverage. I just did 1.6x, and then that gives me 1.6x exposure to the APY, but also the underlying assets. So once again, a safe amount of leverage right here. And not only am I earning all the additional income and earning a 128% APY, I'm also earning all that asset appreciation as the assets rise, and I have more than somebody that's just holding JLP. Now, the other cool thing about this is you're actually not even leveraging up on the price. You could, but I'm not, right? Because keep in mind, JLP is about 70% Sol ETH at WBTC. So when you're using 1.6x leverage, you're essentially getting about 110% exposure to the price as opposed to 100% if you were to just hold spot. But you're getting 160% exposure of this 90% APY right here, which puts it up at like over 100%, which is great. Now, with that being said, I want to show you how you can actually implement a strategy like this into your portfolio. Now, I'm not going to walk you through step by step exactly how to use the platforms. If you guys do want to learn how to do that and you're just getting into DeFi, highly recommend that you check out our DeFi Excel community. Or if you're looking to implement more advanced strategies into your portfolio, like you're using these borrows for liquidity pools, or maybe you're already deployed in DeFi, but you're looking to kind of capitalize on your hodls as well while still remaining full hodl exposure, that's where you can kind of come into DeFi Legacy and we can dive into your portfolio and see where we can make adjustments there. Anyways, to actually take a look at this, the first thing that you're going to do is put assets over on AAVE, right? So for example, I had some wrap Bitcoin, I had some wrap stake Ethereum and Link, right? You would simply just go over to AAVE, you'd select the network you want to do this on. I use Arbitrum because it's cheaper gas fees basically, and I'm just borrowing USDC. So again, it's not really worth it because if I wanted to use Ethereum, I'm going to have to pay like 50 bucks in gas fees to execute borrows, whereas Arbitrum's going to be super cheap. So I basically just go over here, hit supply. Let's just say I had some USDC.E, right? I would supply that as if I was supplying some Ethereum. If I want to supply some Ethereum, put that up. Basically assets that I can put up over on AAVE that I'm already holding as like a hodl, I'm putting them on AAVE. So that way it can increase my overall collateral so I can make sure that I don't get liquidated. And then after those are here, you're going to want to make sure that they are checked as collateral. And then you can go over to the borrow section and start to borrow some asset. Now, very, very important. Timing is pretty crucial on this, right? The only reason why I'm up on these strategies is because I saw good market opportunities and I took advantage of those good market opportunities. So you want to look for dips in the market. Like currently Bitcoin's up 5.5% today. You're not going to want to do it while Bitcoin's up 5.5% today. If we look at this chart right over here over the past 7 days, you would want to do it right over here where Bitcoin's actually down to $94,000. That would have been a very, very good opportunity to do this because then you would reap all the benefit right over here. And that basically covers any borrow costs that you incur over the course of a year because you already made like 7% or so just from the price going up from 94 to about 101K. But you would go over here and you'd actually borrow USDC. So borrow, and then we type in the amount that we want to borrow. Remember, health factor liquidation is at 1 basically, or less than 1, right? I always like to keep it under 40% loan to value if I am bullish, right? And that's because markets can go down. And if market goes down 15, 20, 30% in a day, I don't want to get liquidated instantly. I want to have some buffer room. I also don't want to have to sell my collateral to repay any loans. By doing less than 40% loan to value, right, I can make sure that I'm being safe with this strategy and not getting liquidated whatsoever. Because in order for me to get liquidated, the market is basically going to have to crash like over 50, 60, 70% or something like that. But I would go over here, just borrow some USDC. Say I wanted to do another like 5,000 bucks. I'd borrow 5,000 bucks and put that USDC in my wallet. Pretty cool right there. And then after that USDC is in my wallet, I could go over to a platform like Llama Swap, like Jupiter, and I can execute that trade, get some more wrap Bitcoin, and just throw that right up over here. Another other thing that we could do is we could take that USDC, throw it in like liquidity positions, but you can't put that back as collateral. So it would have, you know, that higher loan to value ratio, because that loan to value ratio is going to go down whenever you inject that capital that you just borrowed right back into the supply, basically. It's kind of netting it out in a sense. But yeah, there's times and places where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this with a liquidity strategy or something like that. And I'll do like quick little trades. Like if I see a really good market opportunity, I'm going to grab like $10,000 of USDC and I'm going to throw it into something like WBTC to USDC, which right over here on the Arbitrum network is doing about 55% APR with a very, very broad range. But I wouldn't use a broad range, right? Because I have conviction and I'm doing a little bit of a trade. And this is where things get riskier, but I'm going to put a pretty high min price. Let's just say it's 95,000, even you go like 96,000 basically. Essentially, you would want to do this kind of strategy at a price that you know you're only going up here from, and you're taking a pretty big bet on it basically. And then you would want to adjust this and basically have about 75% of the capital in the pool in WBTC. That way you're selling the majority of the stablecoins you just borrowed for WBTC, creating long exposure on WBTC. And that right there, 143% APR. And then when we simulate the performance of that, when WBTC goes up to like, let's just say $110,000, because we're assuming it's going from its current price of $100,000 to maybe up 10%, $110,000. Then boom, you just made $443 right there. And you could say maybe it took 7 days to do that. Well, you also got an additional $273 in yield, right? So that's a different strategy that you can run as well. There's times and places for it. Each strategy is going to have its own little performance indicator. You can do the same exact thing with wrap Bitcoin ETH and convert it all into market exposed assets. Point is, you can use leverage safely without having to get liquidated, without having to use tools like extra finance where you are like literally leveraged up to the max, and without being able to withdraw your capital after you do get leveraged and you lend it out. And if you guys have any remaining questions about this strategy, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let me know down below in the comment section what you guys want to see on the channel next. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.